The 12th studio album from the American blues and hard rock singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Joe Bonamassa has gifted listeners with one of this year's standout albums, complete with terrific instrumentals that balances blues and rock terrifically with many driving, forceful pieces, all the while complementing them with the more down-tempo tracks, delivering plenty of great melodies and hooks as well, and with strong songwriting thrown into the mix that contains many memorable choruses. This album has seen an unexpected surge in the album charts, debuting at number 3 here in the UK. But it's not as though that this should come as a surprise, since there's so much to enjoy about this album. The album opens strongly with the track This Train, a rather simple song on paper, but the vocal delivery is full of power and grit and the instrumentation is on point, opening up on a single guitar chord and 2 notes before the drums come out of nowhere and the pair maintains their energy throughout. The first providing the right mix of raucous and frenetic strumming and infectious notes, but honestly it's the piano work here that brings everything together superbly. The pure energy from every single note hammering out of that thing is pure liquid gold that courses through my ears with every second that passes by. And it's the little things as well that make the song so great. The tremolo down the piano, the brief inclusion of background harmonists, the simple punchy ending, it's fantastic. And that enjoyment continues on the very next track, Mountain Climbing, with even more dirt and grit to it from the very opening. The guitars are a little more harsher and have more of a melodic groove and edge to them. The change up from the verse to the bridge, going from the melody to the gruff single chord strum, and the instrumental after the chorus the second time around is simply wild when the combination of guitar distortion and electric guitar solo snaps into play before the rest, where the bass guitar just lowly hums and hangs there, waiting for the moment to snap back into action, and the drums remain as punchy as before. A song about the protagonist working and clawing his way to the top of the mountain, dirty in his boots, clothes, covered in blood, and although he's made his way to the top, he accepts that he still has to bust his ass to stay there. Another forceful delivery with Joe and background vocalists, easily my favourite track on the album. The following song, Drive, shifts into the down-tempo territory, switching to acoustic guitars, the electric guitar having less power to it, and the drums are dulled out. Keeping the background vocalists, the song is basically about Joe and his woman getting dolled up and having a night out just to get away from their usual daytime stresses and have some fun. Lyrically, it's a lot more skeletal than the previous track, and the vocals take a more restrained approach, and it's not half bad. Another instrumental after the chorus, which is decent enough. It's a fine track for what it is. Although, if your woman's not feeling well, Joe, maybe it would be better for her to stay in and rest. Just a suggestion. The chilled out feeling quickly leaves us with the following song, No Good Place for the Lonely, where Joe has left behind a woman who has done him wrong and wanders the streets searching for someone to make him feel the same way she did, but ultimately comes up short and isn't able to find that connection, and there's nowhere he can go to find that person. Whilst the instrumentation doesn't pack as much as a punch as the first 2 songs, and I would have liked a bit more grit and rawness to the song, it's another fine track. The guitar melodies return, introducing some sliding into the mix, and with brief string interludes, the change up about halfway through, dropping the strings and introducing a keyboard organ only adds to the enjoyment. Out of all the songs, I'd probably say the next one, the titular track, Blues of Desperation, is probably my least favourite track. I don't think the instrumentation is entirely terrible. It definitely creates a decent enough of a mood, but the ever-present croaking effect that opens up the track and remains a constant throughout, plus the lack of any real edge and harshness, and I feel that it's missing a few layers and lyrics that don't evoke much of a response for me. Essentially a 4-verse song that lasts around 6.5 minutes, it feels oddly thin and kind of underwhelming when listening to it. And for a song that reads as Joe giving some woman all of his love and having it thrown back into his face, and he's now in a pit of despair, I'm not getting much in terms of a despairing or melancholic vibe, and the delivery lacks poignancy. The following track, The Valley Runs Low, is one of, if not the most stripped back track on the album. An acoustic guitar driven track, complete with the background vocalists, bass guitar which has a little more prominence, and electric keyboard. It's a pleasant little number about Joe battling his quote demons and is waiting on his woman to call him when she's ready to see him again. It's fine, but does feel a little thin on the lyrical front. You Left Me With Nothing But the Bill and the Blues, which follows a 12-bar blues structure, reads as a man who's been messed around by some harpy who has used Joe for his money and is left in a state of drunken despair and frustration. With ascending and descending bass line, punchy electric guitar, bluesy piano in the bridge, and continues throughout the rest of the track, complete with another well-delivered instrumental in the break, chalk up another great track. Distant Lonely Train is another case of strong, punchy instrumentation, but lacking in the lyrical department slightly. A song about Joe's lover leaving him via train, it's another underwhelming song lyrically that longs for some poignancy and sorrow. I can't really get behind the track when it's played as straight as it is. With an electric guitar opening along with a soft growling bass line, adding in some warbled licks at some points, punchy bass drum delivery and added keyboard, again it's decent but doesn't evoke much out of me. How deep this river runs, which reads as someone letting go of previous transgressions over past relationships in order to make the current one work. Once again, great instrumentals with the bog standard electric guitar, bass and drums, and instrumental solo in the break, but again the lyrical skeletalness doesn't quite hit home. The penultimate track, Livin Easy, is simply fantastic. Opting to go in a more bluegrass route, the opening picked guitar strings, blues piano, saxophone, it's a song about Joe being swayed by a woman who's all about living the high life, irrespective of who it costs and the amount it takes in order to live said high life, ultimately being drained of all of his green. This right here is a perfect example of simple yet strong songwriting with a good story that's backed by sublime and seductive music. The final track, What I've Known for a Very Long Time, which reads as an ode to Joe's love interest who longs for her to realise what he feels for her and assures her that he'll be strong for her regardless of what happens. Backed by a brass section, slow drums, keyboard organ and electric guitar, and with another instrumental break, it has this charming gospel vibe to it that makes the track endearing and is a great close to what is a brilliant album. In conclusion, Blues of Desperation by Joe Bonamassa is a fantastic record and it already stands out as one of the best albums released this year, with great songs backed by fantastic instrumentation that's full of texture, layers, melodies, each song with its own distinctive sound. Admittedly, a couple of songs do have a couple of production choices that I would have personally admitted, and a few songs don't necessarily feel as complete as others, but despite that, these issues are very few and far between and don't obstruct the listening experience. A fantastic album and one that I highly recommend. Overall, I scored this album an 88 out of 100.